Operation Husky was the codename for the Allied invasion of Sicily in the Second World War, carried out between July 9 and August 17, 1943. It was one of the most ambitious operations of the war, involving large-scale coordination of naval, air, and ground forces, and it marked the beginning of the Italian campaign that would eventually lead to the fall of fascist Italy and the opening of a new front in Europe. The background to the operation lay in the Allied victory in North Africa, where German and Italian forces had been expelled by May 1943, with the Mediterranean sea lanes threatened and much of southern Europe still under Axis control. The Allied leaders at the Casablanca Conference in January 1943 decided that Sicily would be the next target. Its location made it vital. The island dominated the central Mediterranean, and seizing it would allow safer Allied shipping through the region, provide air bases for attacks against Italy, and potentially force Italy to withdraw from the war. At the same time, the Allies wanted to relieve pressure on the Soviet Union by opening a new European front, which Stalin had been demanding. The planning of Operation Husky was overseen by General Dwight Eisenhower, who had already commanded Allied operations in North Africa. He was appointed Supreme Commander for the invasion. The British 8th Army, commanded by General Bernard Montgomery, was assigned to land in the southeast of the island, while the US 7th Army, under General George Patton, would land further west along the southern coast. Altogether, about 160,000 troops were committed to the initial assault, supported by nearly 3,200 ships and over 4,000 aircraft. It was at that time the largest amphibious invasion in history, larger than the Allied landings in Normandy a year later. The Axis defense was under the command of Italian General Alfredo Cuzzoni, with German forces directed by Field Marshal Albert Kesselring. In theory, about 300,000 Axis troops were on the island, but many of them were poorly equipped Italian conscripts. The German, however, deployed strong, experienced divisions, including the Hermann Göring Panzer Division, which would prove a formidable opponent. The invasion began on the night of July 9 to 10, 1943, with airborne operations. Paratroopers from the US 82nd Airborne Division and the British 1st Airborne Division were dropped to capture key bridges and road junctions. Strong winds, navigational errors, and heavy anti-aircraft fire scattered the paratroopers widely across Sicily, although many units failed to capture their original objectives. Their unexpected presence behind enemy lines created confusion among the Axis defenders and disrupted communications, indirectly aiding the seaborne landings. The amphibious landings took place at dawn on July 10. Patton's US 7th Army landed at Gila, Licata, and Stoliki, while Montgomery's British 8th Army came ashore near Pacino and Syracuse. Resistance was stiff in some areas, particularly at Gila, where American troops faced counterattacks from Italian armor and German mechanized forces. Naval gunfire support proved crucial, with Allied warships bombarding Axis units attempting to push the Americans back into the sea. Despite difficulties, the Allies secured the beachheads on the first day. Once established, the Allies pushed inland. The British aimed to move north along the eastern coast toward Catania, hoping to quickly capture the Catania plain and open the road to Messina. However, they encountered strong German resistance in the mountainous terrain, leading to slow and costly fighting. Montgomery's forces became bogged down in a grinning battle around the Etna line, a defensive barrier constructed by the Germans. Meanwhile, Patton, originally tasked with protecting the left flank, launched an aggressive westward advance. His forces captured Agrigento and, in a swift move, took Palermo on July 22nd. This victory not only boosted American morale but also secured the entire western half of Sicily. Patton then turned his attention eastward, driving along the northern coast toward Messina. This set the stage for what became known as the race to Messina between Patton and Montgomery. The British continued to struggle against determined German defenses near Catania, while Patton advanced rapidly along the coast, capturing key towns and steadily closing in on Messina. Ultimately, Patton's forces entered the city on August 17th, one day before Montgomery securing final victory in the campaign. Although Sicily fell to the Allies, the Germans conducted a remarkable, efficient evacuation across the Strait of Messina between August 11 and August 17 under constant air and naval attacks. German forces ferried more than 100,000 troops, 10,000 vehicles, and a large amount of equipment to the Italian mainland. This withdrawal preserved significant Axis combat power for the defense of Italy, though it could not prevent the collapse of Mussolini's regime. The campaign cost the Allies about 24,000 casualties, including those killed, wounded, and missing. Axis losses were heavier, around 29,000 killed or wounded, and more than 140,000 captured, the majority of them Italians. Politically, the invasion had dramatic consequences. On July 25, while fighting was still raging in Sicily, Benito Mussolini was deposed and arrested following a vote of no confidence by the fascist Grand Council and intervention by King Victor Emmanuel III. Within weeks, Italy began secret negotiations with the Allies, culminating in an armistice signed on September 3, 1943 and publicly announced on September 8. The significance of Operation Husky was immense. It was the first major Allied assault on European soil, demonstrating the ability of Allied forces to mount large-scale amphibious operations involving complex coordination between land, sea, and air forces. It provided vital experience in joint planning and execution that would later be applied during the Normandy invasion in 1944. It also exposed the deep rivalry between Montgomery and Patton, whose competition sometimes caused friction but also drove rapid advances. Most importantly, it knocked Italy out of the war as a reliable Axis power and opened the path for the invasion of mainland Italy, beginning with landings at Salerno in September 1943. In retrospect, Operation Husky was not only a military campaign but also a turning point in the political and strategic landscape of World War II. By forcing Italy out of the Axis alliance and establishing a base in southern Europe, the Allies shifted the balance of the war in the Mediterranean and set the stage for the final defeat of Germany.